It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Esperanza.
Irwin, we're back.
We are back, and we are back at Leisurama.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about this neighborhood, really, because I've been there, but really this history that we've been talking about, the whole idea of going into a department store and buying a house is just, it's mind-blowing.
It really is.
Talk about visionaries.
Yes. Forget Sam Walton and all that he allegedly had done. This was marketing. I mean, my God, buying a house in a department store. So, we're just going to backtrack just a little bit. We're in Leisurama's. We won't get into the whole history that we went into last time about the kitchen sink debate and everything, but basically, long story short, Leisurama, a house that was marketed, houses on Long Island in Montauk that you could buy on the 9th floor at Macy's Herald Square in New York, their flagship store, Macy's Roosevelt Field, and even had a couple of outlets on the plaza in Montauk where you could buy this house. And when we say buy this house, we're talking the linens were on the bed, the plates were in the cabinet, the silverware was in the drawer, and the toothbrushes were in the bathroom.
Move in ready. I mean, it's kind of not dissimilar to today. That's what people want.
No, right. And Andrew,
turnkey, as they call it.
I read a quote from I think it was Andrew Geller's grandson, who's very much a steward of Andrew Geller's memory, and said something to the effect of they were selling this like you would sell orange juice. Like that's how. And in fact, Andrew Geller, I didn't even mention this to you. I read something how Andrew Geller, while he loved the whole concept, he got a little bit disillusioned with when they stopped being all that original. Like it became a little bit too
cookie cutter.
A little bit too cookie cutter, which I guess when you're building 200 of them, they had to be.
Have to be, yeah.
And maybe that was a defining moment for Andrew Geller in a sense, and because of the things he ultimately started to develop. But,
well, I mean, he was already doing some really innovative architecture, beach houses out here at this time when he did this prototype for the Leisurama.
And remember, his beach houses also, in terms of size, were similar. I mean, they were cozy, as they call them. made for outdoor living. Yeah, just a little more adventurous in their design, and a little more creative. I mean, some of them in particular, I mean, were just but that's Andrew Geller. Andrew Geller could be an entire.
He deserves another conversation.
He deserves a full. It's fascinating, that modernist architecture, and particularly in terms of the size. Andrew Geller, the name Andrew Geller and McMansion don't belong in the same sentence.
No, definitely not.
Never were. But anyway, so this developer, Herb Satkin, planned 2,000 Leisuramas, stopped at 200 because, again, they just weren't profitable. And the bottom line was they weren't profitable. The ideal, the dream, the idealism behind it was fantastic, but he couldn't turn a profit. And, he had to cut his losses. In fact, I read when I was doing some of this research, Macy's actually had to sort of step up to the plate and, push this thing forward to the end with money out of their own pocket. Interestingly, Satkin built a more, which I've read they termed conservative Leisurama in Lauderhill, Florida. It's a Fort Lauderdale suburb, Broward County. Which is huge. I mean, that was hundreds and hundreds of these, right? I mean, that's also. I mean, that's like a little city. I think there's 50 or 60,000 people there. And just to close this part of Satkin, he went bankrupt, and unfortunately, when that happened, there was a 1964 World's Fair in New York, in Queens. right near where the tennis stadium now is and
Yeah,
Shea
in
Stadium
Flushing, right? Yeah.
in Flushing Meadows. And the Leisurama exhibit. Now, I remember I was 7 years old at this time. So my parents took me to the World's Fair. For all I know, I was in this house, but at 7, I didn't have much memory of it, but 6 actually. But that exhibit had to close. But I guess that brings us to present day. We always love, I mean, isn't that what history is all about when we can compare it to present day, Esperanza?
Yeah, how it gives us a context and continuity.
Exactly. So now we've already been through the context of this place, which was if you're living in 730 square feet, your likelihood is you're going to be outside and just sleeping in this house.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the point, isn't it?
Uh,
I mean, what do you do when you go to a hotel, on vacation?
Right.
What do you really need? You're there to go out, if you're in the Caribbean, you're out
Right.
on the beach or by the pool, you need a place to sleep, to lay your
Right.
head,
Right.
right?
And I guess this is Esperanza's favorite word. I can't help it. I love throwing it in here. When they sell these houses with all of these amenities, one of these amenities seems to be outdoor kitchens these days. So I guess that's how they get around it when you don't necessarily feel like being in your 8,800 square foot house. You can cook outside, but we're not going to go down there because we're in Leisurama, everybody. 730 square feet. We don't need any more than that. But I was in this neighborhood very recently and I took a walk around, and needless to say, there aren't many of them left.
Yeah, no, I think I sent you a couple of pictures if they're
Yes.
even existing still.
Yeah. I mean, now you do
Out of 200, what do you think? Maybe 20? I mean, who knows? I haven't really been in there.
It's very hard to say because what's happened there again, remember, these are 200 houses. And again, I believe the lot sizes were somewhere between a quarter and a third of an acre. These were not large lot sizes.
No,
In terms of how many
tiny.
are still left, I'm not sure. You can see the bones of many of them when you're walking there. They were ranch houses. They had a carport,
Right.
no basement. And you see the bones. You also see those houses, the bones with additions on top. You see the carport closed off to make a room. You see complete second stories, and probably most of all, you see something completely new there. Meaning,
right, completely raised the Leisurama to build something
exactly
bigger, better.
Exactly. Now, when Esperanza and I were talking about doing this, Esperanza emailed me a real estate ad from, I think it was 2020.
Yeah.
So
not too long ago.
Ancient history. There's that term again. 2 years ago, and the house was listed for $875,000, and this was an original. I think they were actually even almost marketing as an original.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
It was in the original, like the convertible, 730 square feet, and they were asking 875,000. And now you contrast it. I went on Zillow just to see currently. Knowing that neighborhood, on Zillow you draw that little circle around the neighborhood and you try to get, the houses in. So I did that, and there is a house there currently. So now we're 2022. So 1964, 2022, in my math, that's 58 years. 58 years later. So the $13,000 convertible, 730 square feet, became 1.95 million on a street there. And it's still on the same size lot. They didn't expand the land, but
and the same house.
Yeah, well, it's
slightly expanded or
a complete gut rent of a leveled and brand new.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
This is a new 2-story. I mean, I don't think it was all that large. It's, it can't be that large because the price, let me put only in quotation marks, it's only 1.95. So at $1,000 or whatever a square foot, that's not going to be a hell of a lot, large house necessarily. So it's probably going to be around a 2,000 square foot house, just to give somebody a perspective. But our Hamptons, Esperanza, we always say is about sense of place. And again, I know I keep going back to Sands with Leisurama, but there are as different as these places were, they do share some similarities.
Yeah, this is a more recent history, but it's definitely that ideal of an escape for middle class people to have, to come out here and enjoy the sun and the surf, right?
Exactly, and not and to be outdoors. So when I was walking around, and by the way, when I was walking around this neighborhood, now it was a weekday, so the people that were there were probably year-rounders, I would think, or whatever. One thing I should add, while these houses were built, with heat and everything else, obviously, and insulated, in their early stages, these were summer houses.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting because in that period of the 50s and 60s, a lot of these beach houses were not built that way. They were built as purely summer beach houses. Then they drain the pipes, winterize, and they wouldn't see the house until the following year, right?
Exactly right.
So that's interesting that they actually made them a more year-round use, if you will.
Right. So look, I statistically, I couldn't tell you what the percentage of year-rounders versus part-timers in this neighborhood are, but I think there are a fair amount of people living, between the pandemic and everything else, living there more or less full-time. But it still does retain, for me anyway. It has that kind of neighborhood feel again.
Yeah.
You still see the remnants, as I mentioned, of the houses that were, but and again, referring to a great philosopher we once mentioned on an earlier episode, this isn't a museum. We can't freeze the past and everything else.
Right.
It certainly, I'm sure, doesn't look like 1964 Leisurama.
No, I'm sure it doesn't. But like you said, these are house lots that are small, on the small side. Fortunately, they can't, to use your term or Paul Goldberger's, shoehorn
Yes,
a 7,000 square foot house with a pool house and a pool on that lot, right?
And the more things change, the more things may stay the same. Probably a lot of the original homeowners in this neighborhood were from Brooklyn, and I would really wonder if we have the hipster Brooklyn in here now, because I actually read a story somewhere on the internet about, and the guy sort of almost referred to himself as a hipster without saying it, but I could, sort of giving that impression of how he only wanted to be in a Leisurama because it spoke to him and all of this. And, in that vein, an original Leisurama is like, if you come across that today, it's iconic to find. It is. It really is a piece of history.
You mentioned, I think that there was a movie, there was a Leisurama documentary, right? And I think you can get a DVD, but there was a little clip that you could see on YouTube, and there was a family that still had some of the original cutlery, some of the original plates, the chairs, things like that. I mean, that's not to freeze things in time, but it's super cool when you have
amazing
that those, like you're saying, a piece of history. Like, it's such an icon.
Yeah, it's so. And again, to use another term we use here on our Hamptons a lot, interestingly, Leisurama is another story that not that many people know the history of. I went on a garden tour a few weeks ago in Montauk, and I happened to tell somebody that was there, I'm going to go over. I want to go look at the old Leisurama houses. Again, this is someone that lived in Montauk and said, "What's Leisurama?" So
no kidding, really?
Yeah. So this is these.
But didn't you also speak with somebody who said, "I live in one"? Wasn't there someone? Yes. I mean,
through the Trails Association, I'm talking to the Montauk Historical Society, and one of the people that at the Montauk Historical Society was very excited to give a tour of with the Trails group of this neighborhood and talk more about Leisurama. So there really are a lot of cool connections. It's a great storyline, and these two were not private streets. So I encourage anybody when they're in Montauk, look up Leisurama and look up Culloden Point and Culloden Shores and take a bike ride or a walk and sort of get a feeling of the sense of place of what was here. Because
Yes.
you
Yeah.
still do see it. It hasn't been, there have been a lot of vistas, and we've spoken about this on Our Hamptons a lot. There have been a lot of vistas here that have been obliterated and they're just gone. And this one really isn't. Disappearing to a large extent, yes. So anyway, it's still there. So again, we encourage everybody, go take a ride. Leisurama is still something to see. And Esperanza, on that note, maybe I'll meet you in Montauk over there and we'll do this live one day.
Oh, that would be fun. I mean, a tour. Let's do a tour of that place in particular. We encourage people to go and just drive by because it's public streets and they're still there, those Leisuramas.
Well, that would open the door to taking Our Hamptons on the road. Right now, this whole Zoom thing, I don't know, there might be a lot of noise in the background to do this live on
We'll
set,
need special mics.
we will need special mics.
Greater investment.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Esperanza, as always, thanks so much for this dialogue.
A pleasure, Irwin. Until next time.
Until next time, bye-bye. Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.